In generations past, it was not as easy for men to express feelings and appreciation and say, I love you to the people that matter the most.
All right, welcome to the F Words podcast. I have here John Forbes of Forbes Financial, and today we're going to be talking about a couple things that are really important to John. One, we're going to be talking about building a legacy and what that means, and two, we're going to be talking about gratitude. John, will you kind of start off with how does gratitude and legacy connect back to being a financial advisor? How are those things connected?
Gratitude and legacy are intertwined. We can't really pursue passionately what we want a legacy to look like if it doesn't, at its core, it doesn't have the sense of gratitude for being thankful for what you have, for who you have more than what you have, and why you have it. And that's where it all starts to kind of tie together, and we see it reflected in the form of creating a legacy.
So, I imagine that when you're talking to somebody as they kind of near retirement, or maybe they've been retired for a couple of years, that starting to think about like what they're leaving behind is really important to them. And I imagine that it leads to some really deep conversations. How do you talk to your clients about not only sort of helping them retire and then be comfortable, but also what they're going to do in their retirement and what they're going to leave behind for the next generation?
It's funny how retirees and getting up towards that, and myself, but it's funny how grandkids have an impact. Grandkids have an impact that kids just don't have. And it seems like when you see that next generation coming along, that it really starts to plant the seeds in your mind of what do I want to be to them when I'm not here anymore? It's not simply a financial equation at all. It's the stories, it's the childhood memories that you can share with them to help them build an idea of who you really truly are. It's not just Pops and Gigi. It's when they hear about what Pops did as a kid, or when Pops and Gigi were first married. When you plant those stories and share those stories, it really starts to bear fruit. Maybe it didn't in your kids, but in your grandkids, you start to see opportunities to really let them know who you are. And it's not simply what you left them necessarily in terms of things or money, but it's who you are as a person, and encouraging those conversations to be had with my clients, with their family, is a big part of what we do.
You said something in our last podcast, talking about how getting to retirement, everybody seems, like, especially early in the process, to be worried about the financial side. They're worried about the money. They're worried about what they're going to do. A lot of times it's really important to kind of reflect on the fact that if you had all the money in the world and you get to the end of your life and you have no one to share it with, no one to pick up the phone and call you, I think it's going to leave a lot to be desired. So when you kind of talk to somebody, maybe somebody who's my age, who's 40, somebody who's at retirement age, or somebody you've been working with a long time, how do you kind of coach them through, like, what's the balance? How much money is important to have versus how much is important to go do the things that make your life fulfilled?
It's consistently one of the most fascinating conversations that we get to have, in that, I tell everybody, you can retire whenever you want. Now, what it's going to look like is a very different thing. But when we can get people away from looking at an index and trying to figure out what their index return is, or am I beating the index or am I not beating let's come up with your happiness index. How are we going to define what's going to bring you joy now and what's going to bring you joy 10, 20, 30 years from now? It's hard to get focused in when someone's in their 30s or 40s. It's hard to get focused on the sacrifice of setting aside money, that you could be using. You got bills to pay, you got all these things to do. But when you catch a vision of what I want it to look like, I'm making this sacrifice, and it's not so that I can have 2 commas in my 401k plan. It's that I can have twice the joy with my family, and you tie it back to, it's not what that money grows to, it's what that money can become. In this world today, you have a currency and we can trade it for something. You can be obsessed with accumulating money and work 80 hours a week and do all these things. And my guess is, with most of you, you'd look back with an awful lot of regret if that were the case. But if you can have a plan and have an idea of what's my happiness going to look like, what's going to bring me the most joy along the way toward retirement and in retirement, it helps us to kind of redefine what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And I think that's really timely too, as we get ready and we're kind of approaching, Thanksgiving and things like that. And this like reflection of like all the things that we have and all the things that we're grateful for. How do you kind of reflect on your own sort of gratitude for what you've built and the community that you've built around you and the people that you have in your life? How does that sort of translate to you and what you get to do every day?
Gratitude is such an easy thing to lose track of. One of the things I try to do when I keep my desk clean enough, I've got a little saying on my desk that says, how can I be a blessing to someone today? And just something as simple as seeing that in the morning can kind of reset when things are kind of going crazy and you remember, okay, how can I serve well? How can I serve my wife, my family, my team here? How can I serve my clients well? And when you get focused on that and you realize how great you have it with your health, with your family, with the relationship with your kids, with your team members if you're working, when you kind of ground everything into that, it really helps set the tone for the day. And it's hard to encourage others to be grateful if you aren't grateful yourself. So you start by getting at your core, getting yourself right, and then encouraging others. A lot of what we do here. My whole team, a lot of what we do is just simply encourage people well.
John, one of the things that you do amazingly well too, and I don't even know that you realize this, is you create opportunity for these amazing things to happen. You create the spaces and the places and the conversations that allow them to come up. And so I guess I want to do that for you. I'd like to create a space right here. As you're thinking of all the people who you're grateful for, what message would you like to send them going into sort of the Thanksgiving holiday?
It's unique this year in that not only do we have Thanksgiving coming up, but we've got national elections coming up. And a conversation that needs to be had is we get so caught up in who wins, who's going to be in the White House in 2025. Sometimes it's Springfield. Sometimes, there's all kinds of things that when we start talking about elections and people get pretty wound up about their team winning. And I cannot reiterate enough that your joy and your purpose is not going to be found by who's sitting in the governor's seat in Springfield. It's not going to be who's in the White House. That's not who's going to determine your level of joy every day and you pursuing a purpose. The person that's got the greatest impact on that is the one you see every morning in the mirror. And that's what we need to stay focused on. Don't get too excited about who wins and who loses. It makes for good entertainment. But as far as what is the impact it's going to have on you every day, I doubt the winner of the election will determine whether or not you can be a blessing to somebody, whether or not you can think of others before yourself, whether or not you can take time to do those things that you've been putting off for another day. Those are the kinds of things that when we're intentional about it, that's what changes our lives. That's what brings the joy.
Oh, I think that's amazing. So what would you tell the people in your life that have created this opportunity for you, the things that you're grateful for? What message would you like to send to those people?
Oh gosh, I am so grateful to my wife. Growing up, her dad hung his own shingle, and it did not work out well. And her childhood was filled with times where, bill collectors were calling. There was very little financial security in her life. So we got married, and I'm pursuing a career in accounting, and I get this itch to drop all of that and start in the financial investments and financial services field. And it would have been very, very easy for it to be a panic and for her to say, no, just this isn't going to work. And in fact, early in my career, in my first year, I had a month where I had a paycheck that was $2.54. She was about 7 or 8 months pregnant when we got that check. And I remember showing it to her, and I thought she was going to burst out in tears. She starts laughing. And it was so monumental to my mindset going forward that I knew she was in my corner. She was my biggest fan, and we would get through this. And so flash forward to about 19 years ago, and decided to become even more independent, really, truly hang my own shingle. And it would have been very easy for her to say, no, just let's just stay where you're at. It's comfortable. You're doing well. And she was 100% on board. And I am forever grateful that she made the sacrifices that she made so that we could build this business and this life. I have kids that love us dearly and no high maintenance kids. So it's nice to get to spend time, especially when they become adults. When they want to spend time with you, that's a win. That's one of the biggest wins as a parent you can ever experience, when they don't have to be with you and they want to be with you. And I am just so grateful for my kids and my grandkids and the bond that we all have.
That's amazing. Like as a fellow entrepreneur too, I feel that story because I feel like there's a support group for entrepreneurial wives and husbands, spouses, craziness that they have to deal with because it is a roller coaster and they're along that ride with you. We're kind of talking about legacy here. And when I think of legacy, I think of a quote that is from the musical Hamilton. And I don't know if it's coming from somewhere else, but it's legacy. That's planting seeds in a garden I'll never get to see. Yeah. And I just love that quote, is the idea that somewhere along the line, you're going to plant a seed for someone to have a better life, to create an opportunity that you may never meet, that may never know you. Mm-hmm. And you can leave really amazing things behind. Mm-hmm. What are some of the conversations that you have with clients that are going through this journey of figuring out what gets left behind, after they're gone? What kind of things do you talk about? How do you bring that up?
A couple of things come to mind when you ask that, Nick. We are always trying to focus our clients on what we call the true riches. True riches are not found on a financial statement. They're not found on a tax return. The true riches are the experiences that you have with those that are the most important to you. We love to encourage our people to share that wisdom, share those conversations of what made them who they are today, planting those seeds with their kids, with their grandkids, to give them context and understand why certain things are maybe really, really important to you that might not be as important to other people. Those are the types of conversations when we get into the non-financial, real living that inspire me and it inspires my clients as well. It does kind of bring up another topic of one of the things we talk about. And again, this is just through my own personal experience. I'm not a big fan of prepaid funerals, but I'm a big fan of pre-planned funerals. And what I mean is, when your loved ones are devastated and they're at their lowest point, is often when they have to sit down and make decisions about what a service is going to look like. And I know this might sound morbid, but it's so important. The surviving family members just want to honor the deceased well. That's all they want to do. And it doesn't take a contract. It doesn't take a prepaid funeral, but it takes a yellow scratch pad and you jot down, hey, here's some songs I want. Here's some people I want to make sure you can reach out to. And the great thing is you can wad that up and throw it away and rewrite it again and again and again. But at the end of the day, you just want to make it as easy as possible on those you care the most about so that they can honor you well.
When we talk about leaving a legacy, I think that you've got to, talk to a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life who have had some really interesting life experience. Mm-hmm. I had the privilege of, joining you for some of the interviews that we did with some of your clients and just some incredible stories. Mm-hmm. And when you kind of think of all of the different people that you've got to talk with and work with over the years, are there any stories of like the thoughts or the things that they want to leave as part of their legacy that stick out to you? Obviously, without sharing any privileged information, but just what kinds of things do people seek out to leave behind in their legacy? Big things, small things.
Yeah, one of the things we did do a video series a while back. I think we're probably going to come back to that, roll that out again. It is emotionally taxing for everybody to do that. But in having those conversations with clients about the true riches, about the things that made them who they are, what I found was, I had these 60, 70, 80-year-old guys who just break down in tears as we're talking about things, because in generations past, it was not as easy for men to express feelings and appreciation and say, I love you to the people that matter the most. And what I found is, as these guys have gotten older and wiser, again, they're looking back and realizing, okay, the money wasn't what it is. It's about letting the people that you love know you love them. And to see time and again these guys express that in a conversation was wonderful. And I tell you what makes it even more valuable. We've had some folks that we did that series with that have passed away. And just knowing that we captured those conversations and can share those conversations with the daughters and the sons and the grandkids and the great grandkids, and they can watch it over and over and over and see, not just because they were told, but see in person their grandpop or Mimi or whoever it might be, sharing that story. The idea behind it, again, it's funny, these things come back from life experiences, but the idea behind capturing those conversations came about because many, many years ago when we first got married, my wife's grandmother had given us a Christmas ornament, and she had recorded her voice. It was just a little 15, 20-second recording, wishing Karen, a Merry Christmas and love you and all these things. And we kept it for years and years and years. And of course, you know what happened? One year we got the ornament out, and the voice recorder was broken. It wouldn't work. And just the memory of having and hearing her voice years and years after she had gone was such a sweet thing for us. And that was the beginning seeds of this True Riches conversation, and making sure that we found a way to kind of capture the real true emotion of the things that matter the most to some of our favorite people.
I love that. It's so often the little things. What about the role that maybe like family traditions play in the kind of legacy you want to leave behind? Do you find that different families from different walks of life, have really, really different ideas about what's important to them? Do you find that they have specific traditions that are just part of their family that they want to remember or they want to honor, kind of going forward into passing that on to the next generation?
And I can speak for our family. One of the traditions, and it gets back to my wife's grandmother, they would make divinity every year. When Karen's grandmother was around, the divinity was really good. As it went to Karen's mom, to Karen, and to my daughters, the quality of product the output isn't that great, but the memories of every time they make it, remembering that time spent with Karen or with Karen's mom or with Karen's grandmother, those memories are preserved and captured in that, regardless of if it tastes like a rock or not. It's the act of getting together and just having that shared experience.
Just to share one of mine, my grandfather made these cookies, and they had molasses in them, and I hated them as a kid. Like I never enjoyed them once as a man in my probably 20s, maybe even early 30s, while he was approaching the end of his life, he came in and we made cookies with him and, the rest of my family, and he taught us the recipe. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure that I may ever make those cookies again, but making those cookies with him because of how special they were incredible. And you think of all the little things, all the little memories that really, really can make a big impact. And that's so much fun. What about the other kinds of ways that people sort of leave a legacy behind? And that can be anything from, charitable donations to like having a library named after yourself. I don't know what the extreme case of those are. Do you find that a lot of people value those or are seeking out to leave a scholarship behind or to leave something behind for a person they've maybe never met?
A lot of people, when you start talking about leaving a legacy in terms of a financial legacy, to go from you spend almost all your life working and saving and accumulating to starting to draw off of that to supplement your income in retirement, it can be very nerve-wracking. It can be a very challenging transition. So as we work with people to get there, we try to give them the confidence that, hey, you've done well. You've done well. We've got a plan in place. We know what we're doing. It is completely okay to look beyond your tight circle into what are the things that are most important to you. Whether it's, I don't know, there's some people it's the American Cancer Society or it's hospice or it's any number of things. When people have the financial confidence to know what they're going to be fine, their lifestyle is not going to be affected, they're fine. We can look beyond and set an example for what it means to serve others well. And there's so many great ways that people can support and foster some really impactful legacy scenarios once they get comfortable that they're okay. And that's one of the big conversations we typically have is how can we get you to where you're okay? And once we have a pretty firm grip on that, let's identify what has had a big impact on you in your life, and to sit down and have those conversations. I don't pop out a list of charities, but you get people to open up and talk about what were some important things that happened in their lives along the way, and it becomes easier and easier to identify, wow, how can we provide that same opportunity for others?
I like that, and I like this idea that time is so valuable. On this topic of legacy, when you're talking to somebody who is, in the working, ages, they're maybe in their 30s, maybe in their 40s, maybe they're even in their 50s. Before they get to that point where they're looking back on a lot of those times, what advice would you give them, knowing about how many people you've talked to who have been at the the end of their retirement age and sort of looking back on those memories? What advice would you give those people who are still younger, who are still saving for retirement, about not only saving for retirement, but then also kind of planting those seeds for a legacy later on?
A common theme that I see with people who have had success with investing is they are intentional, and they are diligent, and they consistently stick to the plan. You can't control outcomes, but you can control how you're going to respond to them. And just some core foundational beliefs that can lead to success in investing involve things like block out the noise. There's so much pressure and urgency through all medium, whether it's TV or social media or online. There's so many things that can distract, frighten people from pursuing successful financial outcome. So yeah, if you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you have to be intentional, and you have to be aware. A lot of people spend more time planning a vacation than they do planning for retirement. And if you don't get an awareness of how much do I need to be setting aside to make this work? Yeah, I'm participating in my retirement plan. Okay, well, you're participating, but to what end? What's going to happen? You can participate and have a miserable retirement, or you can participate and have a retirement of abundance. And you have to know more than simply, yeah, I'm participating in the plan, or yes, I'm getting the match, or you need to have a plan. At its heart, if you don't have any idea what it takes in your situation and everyone's situation is different, but if you don't have an idea of what it's going to take to get me where I want to go, it's pretty tough to get there.
I think that one of the things you hear is, as a kid growing up, you're 18, they're like, you start now, and it's so much easier. And then in your 20s, they're like, oh, you should really be thinking about this. And then you're in your 30s, and you're like, hey, it's really time to get going. And I feel like it's always advice that is. A lot of people don't follow it. Everybody gets to a point where they've heard it over and over, and they just didn't listen, and they're going, "Oh man, why didn't I listen?" Do you have any advice like that you see as from your shoes?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We hear it all the time: the woulda, coulda, shoulda. If only. Well, it reminds me. There's a certain Disney animated movie involving a lion who's a king. In one part of the movie, he's leaning over, looking at his reflection in the water, and his cohort whacks him in the back of the head. He asked, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." And it's so much. We can live with regret and talk about, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I wish I would have done this or that. I don't care if you're 25 or if you're 55. You can take steps right now that will get you in a much better position in retirement, or certainly at a minimum have a grasp of what's it going to look like, and what if I work a little longer, what does that look like in retirement, or if I save a little more now, what's it look like? Once you get an understanding, it gets a lot more exciting, and it becomes easier to stay engaged with the plan if you know why you're doing it. The biggest mistake, and I love it when we get 19, 20, 22-year-old kids coming in saying, hey, grandma said I need to come see you. I need to start saving. I want to put some money in a Roth IRA. That's great. But many times I'll sit down and have the conversation with them. Okay, let's make sure we have a good financial foundation in place before we start investing. And what does that mean? A financial foundation is you've built some accumulated savings up so that when the world throws you a curveball, and it will, that you're not dipping into investments to fund that. You've got a cushion. You've got something set aside that will allow you to not put it on a credit card, to not have to borrow to get out of a jam. Having that cushion, the emergency cushion set aside, is the very base of a strong financial foundation. And then the next step is debt. I'll have kids come in, they're ready to start putting in $100 a month into a Roth, or $200 a month, or whatever it might be. And then I find out they've got a $6,000 credit card debt that's charging 29% interest. Okay, well, I love that you're enthusiastic about investing, but what you need to do right now is work on that financial foundation. And I like to give people usually a 1, 2, and 3 year plan of what the steps are that they can take that will get that financial foundation in place. And then once we get that in place, then we can start talking about what kind of investments do we need to start setting up. Because the last thing I want to do is get somebody 2 years into an investment plan, the market sells off a little bit, and the transmission goes out. And now they've got to cash out, and they've taken a temporary decline and made it permanent. Whereas if they had had that cushion set aside, that the investment program could continue uninterrupted. Yeah, I love the enthusiasm of younger investors, but making sure that financial foundation is in place first is so important. And then the second thing is for the 40s and the 50s that are in that woulda, coulda, shoulda mode. Let's not beat ourselves up over that. Let's step back and say, okay, what can we do right now? What are some steps we can take? It may be investing, it may be paying off a car, and maybe paying off a credit card, but we can sit down and come up with a plan that will give folks financial confidence. And I think when you get that, is when the other things start to kind of come into place.
A lot of people, especially, in the TikTok generation, there's so much content out there on financial advice or things like that. And they all seem to have the one common, thing in underlying, which is get rich quick. Oh, if you just do this, if you just buy this stock, if you just jump into this, you can make all this money really fast. I already know a little bit about what your answer is going to be here. But like when you talk about all of the people that you have worked with over, the years of your career, what would you say to somebody who's on the verge of maybe jumping into something that feels like a get rich quick scheme, or trying to turn around and figure out how they can triple their investment in 6 months type of thing? Yeah,
we refer to the get rich quicks. We call them get poor quick, because that's typically what happens is you'll get poor quick if you do that. At its core, there's just some foundational things that have to be in place with an investment plan. And we can't manage return, but we can manage risk. And yeah, there's so many people who hear about this hot idea or this hot stock or this hot cryptocurrency or whatever it might be. And they're all very enticing. All of them are. But you don't have to hit a home run in order to have success. Just having a solid, diversified, it sounds so boring, a diversified approach to investing is what works. And I think of it, kind of like chili. I love chili. Those exciting get poor quick or get rich quick opportunities, I think of them as jalapenos. I like a little bit of jalapeno on my chili. I don't want a bowl full of jalapenos. So that doesn't do anybody any good. So making sure that you've got that core in place already. Then if we want to take a chance on a flyer here and there, okay, but man, you got to have the core in place first. And every time someone tells me about it, get rich quick, I'll tell them, Walker's Bluff Casino is right around the corner. If you want to get rich quick, go put it all on Red 19 and see what happens. You might get rich quick, but there's a reason why they have lots of flashing lights and cheap drinks and all those things at casinos. It's because the house is making a whole lot more money than you are. And when you take that mentality and look at it investing, there's no surefire triple your money in X number of weeks or months. When you hear those opportunities, think of it as a roulette wheel. How do you like your chances on that? And then that's about what you can experience when you try those get poor quick schemes.
I love the analogy to a roulette wheel, especially because it's like everybody's heard the story of somebody who went to the casino and got lucky and won a bunch of money. And, they're always happy to tell that story. But you go to a casino and you bet it all on red 19 and you get lucky and you hit and you have just this windfall. And then you take all that windfall and you bet it on red 19 again. And even if you just through miraculous circumstances, you get lucky again.
Yeah.
How many times are you going to swing for the fences before inevitably it's not going to be your turn? It's not going to keep coming back. And so I like that idea of like balancing out that risk. That is so important. When we were talking about sort of, leaving that legacy and how to do that in a paced way and really thinking about what's important. The question that I came up in my head just is kind of thinking about you specifically, as you get to have this just wealth of life experience where you get to meet all of these incredible individuals who live these incredible lives, who I'm sure share great advice with you that you get to learn from them as well. What does that mean for the legacy you start planning on leaving behind, someday in the future? What's important to you?
Yeah, what's important to me is, have I served my family well? Did I keep my priorities straight? And these are things we're working on daily. We all should be working on daily. By no means have I perfected any of this. But yeah, I want to make sure that when people think about me, they smile. Am I leading that kind of life where my family, my friends, if they think of me, they smile? That's another win when we talk about leaving a legacy. Beyond that, we can also, we and Karen and I are talking about things about, who and what are the things that have played, institutions that have played important roles in our lives. How can we honor that? So there is an opportunity to do that as well. But at the end of the day, everybody's circles are kind of these concentric rings. It's my spouse, my kids, my family, my friends, and then as you kind of get comfort with making sure you're pursuing the right things with those, then you can start talking about what kind of mark do you want to leave.
So I think I want to end things with two different sort of thoughts here today. And I always like to end these with sort of a call to action to somebody who found some of this information valuable, who's thinking either, I need to do more on the retirement side, or I need to start thinking about the legacy I want to leave behind. And I want to start on the retirement side, which is, if somebody out there, let's say like myself, is, maybe I've done a little bit, but I know I haven't done enough. I know there is more to be done. What is something that a listener could do in the next week or two to start clarifying, okay, what is the 1 year, 2 year, 3 year? Where do I get started? What conversations do I need to have? Where do they start?
One place to start would be, I've got this 20-minute, ask me anything, a 20-minute session where we can sit down and talk. It can be Zoom, it can be a call, it can be in person. And, I can usually hear enough of a story fairly quickly to kind of see, here's some things you might want to work on, and share 2 or 3 ideas. It's a free visit. There's no cost. It's a way that I can pay back and encourage others. There are many times when someone comes in thinking they're going to invest and we don't invest. It's because, like we said earlier, we got to get that foundation right. So it's something practical that you can do. Reach out to our office, give us a call, and we'll get a cup of coffee in 20 minutes. And I will hopefully leave you with a sense of what your next steps need to be.
That's awesome. And then on the legacy side, I think that there are so many people out there who are so caught up in the day-to-day. They're so busy that they never really stop to think about maybe some of the things that are the most important. And same question here, something that they can do in the next couple of weeks. Maybe somebody who is either approaching retirement age or somebody who's already retired, who has a spouse or a family that they want to start thinking about what's really important to them. What advice would you give that would open up and start that conversation with maybe a family member, maybe your spouse? Where would you start with that conversation?
A lot of people, when they talk about legacy planning, they think of wills and trusts and things, and then those are all wonderful. But I stumbled across this a few years ago, and it really was kind of the core behind the true riches concept. There's something called an ethical will. And it has nothing to do with finances. It has nothing to do with who gets what. It's a way to tell your story. And if this is something that you find interesting, I can't tell your story for you, but you can reach out to our office and we'll give you a list of about 25 questions. And you can go through these questions and identify which ones you want to address. And you can start to kind of document your story. And these questions are really good at inspiring you to think about things you haven't thought of in a long time. And it's a great way to have a conversation or to share information and feelings with somebody that otherwise it might be hard to share with. So feel free to reach out to our office and we will get you our 25 question list.
I love that. Before we wrap up, do you have one of the questions that you might be able to share with us? Is there anything that jumps out on that list as maybe an example?
Well, on the financial side, or somewhat financial, growing up, what did money mean to you? You know, was money something that brought you comfort? Was it something that stirred anxiety? You know, what are some things that you think back when you were younger? Because a lot of us, we kind of form our opinions on a lot of things, whether it's investing or if it's home ownership or whatever it might be, come from things we learned as kids. You know, what did your parents and what did your family when in the topic of money, what kind of role did that play in their lives?
John, thank you so much for sharing this. I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn something new. You have such a great story, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing it.
Oh, very welcome. Nick, enjoyed the time.
All right. We'll see you next time for the F Words podcast. We're going to be talking about all of the F words John loves. Will you share what those are really quickly as we wrap up here?
Yeah, it's food, faith, fun, finances, family, and my favorite F word, philanthropy.
Beautiful. John, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks.
Security and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax or legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risk, including the possible loss of principal.